Should I just go ahead and review every single Nicolas Cage film I've ever seen slash own? I might actually do that. Not right all at once, obviously, but a little bit here and there, starting with the latest Nicolas Cage romp that I've watched, The Family Man. The Family Man is a very delightful and heartwarming film. I honestly think it's probably one of Nicolas Cage's best, at least in my opinion. It is one of the most wholesome Cage has ever been. He has a lot of freak-out moments that are classic Nicolas Cage, but he also tries to be genuine. He has genuine emotion. He delivers some really powerful speeches, particularly one near the end of the film. He starts off as a guy who is just out of college or something with his high school sweetheart. These two people are very much in love, but Nicolas Cage has to move to London for a year for some sort of thing, like an internship or whatever. He's going to London for that, and he has to separate from his girlfriend for a year, and she doesn't think they're going to make it for a year long distance, and they're going to break up eventually, and he's going to move on, she's going to move on, etc., etc. And she says, why don't we both just give up on our plans and just get together right now and make the most of it right now? And she wants to choose them over a career, and Nicolas Cage chooses his career over her. And then we skip 13 years into the future. Nicolas Cage is now in his mid-30s, and he is a very, very successful business mogul. He's living in like a penthouse suite in New York City, that type of money, big money. He's driving a Ferrari. He's really successful, so as to say, and he's very much kind of like if he were mentally disturbed, he would probably be Patrick Bateman from American Psycho, but sadly, but thankfully, he is not mentally disturbed. He is not Patrick Bateman, though he is one of those types of big shot characters, a trader type of character who does major billion-dollar investment deals for mega corporations and gets huge commissions, and he's beloved by everybody at the business that he works with. He's the president of operations there, and he's got so much esteem, but he lives as a bachelor. He's just doing his life, so as to say, without necessarily love in his life. He is very rich in monetary stuff, but he is poor in love, right? And so his high school sweetheart tried to get a hold of him recently, and his secretary tells him about this, and Nicolas Cage decides not to return her call, and instead goes on some other business tirade. He then eventually decides to walk home one night. It's Christmas Eve. It's very festive right now, and he decides, I'm just gonna walk home tonight. And he walks home, and he stops at a cafe to pick something up, and at that same time, that cafe gets held up by a criminal. And the criminal pulls a gun on the clerk, and Nicolas Cage just tries to defuse the situation. He tries to get the criminal to back off and put his gun away. He says, let's make a deal. I'll buy your faulty ticket for the money that you wanted to take from the clerk, and then you could just leave. And so the criminal agrees with that, and Nicolas Cage gives him the money, and he walks off. But first, Nicolas Cage asks him a couple of questions. He tries to say, why do you do this? What would it take to help get you on track in life? And the criminal is laughing at Nicolas Cage, saying, you're really trying to do this. You think you're going to save me. And then he turns that right around onto Nicolas Cage and says, what do you need in your life? What are you missing in your life? And Nicolas Cage says he has all he needs. His life is perfect. And so the criminal says, well, you brought this on yourself. and it's a little bit of an ominous little line. Nicolas Cage goes to bed, goes home that night. Now things are normal as it can be up until he falls asleep. When he wakes up in the bed of his high school sweetheart. He's in suburbia. There's 2 kids running around. There's a family dog. And everything's crazy, and it's Christmas morning. And he has no idea how he got there. So he's freaking out, obviously. And he sneaks out of the house and drives back into the city and tries to get back into his building. But apparently the doorman doesn't recognize him. He apparently doesn't work for this big Wall Street company, and his Ferrari is not his anymore. The criminal drives up in that Ferrari and explains to Nicolas Cage that he is experiencing what they call a glimpse. And this glimpse is Nicolas Cage's life. Had he decided not to go to London that day, this is the life he would have lived instead. And Nicolas Cage has to learn something from this glimpse, and that's the only way he can return back to his old life, is that he has to learn from this glimpse exactly what is trying to teach him. So, being stuck in this life, Nicolas Cage returns to the suburban house. He has to use a map to find his way back here, because he doesn't exactly know where this version of him lives. And his eldest child, at least the eldest child of the Nicolas Cage would have lived this life, suspects he's an alien and taking the form of her father. And Nicolas Cage just goes along with it. And so Nicolas Cage and the eldest daughter form a sort of bond, and the eldest daughter ends up basically teaching Nicolas Cage how to be Nicolas Cage in suburbia, which is fantastic. It is a fantastic little setup, and Nicolas Cage learns what he was missing in his life and what he actually wanted in his life that he never got after being this big business mogul guy. And after this little stint of falling back in love, he realizes he never fell out of love with his high school sweetheart, and that he just drowned himself in his work to fill that void in his life. And when he wakes up from this glimpse into this other reality, he realizes just how empty his life at the top had become. And so he decides to track down the high school sweetheart, who is now moving to Paris. She's the one who is about to get onto a plane to move to Paris to live a big career life. She decided to work for a profit attorney organization. The careers that both Nicolas Cage and his high school sweetheart chose to have in the suburbia glimpse was Nicolas Cage became a business trader for the high school sweetheart's father, who owns a tire business. So Nicolas Cage was a tire salesman, so as to say, and the high school sweetheart was working for a non-profit attorney business. So that was very much a suburbia type of middle-class arrangement. Both of them now are going into big high-class arrangements, and Nicolas Cage realizes that that's not the type of life he wants to live anymore. So he tries to convince the high school sweetheart to not get on the plane. Nicolas Cage says, "I choose us. And he has this incredible little speech that he says at the end of the film to try to get her to not get on the plane to go to Paris. And he explains this whole scenario of the glimpse and says he doesn't know if it was a dream or what, but it felt real to him, and that's what he wants. And he's willing to do anything to get that with her, and that seems to convince the high school sweetheart to not get on the plane, and the two of them go out for a coffee to restart their lives, so as to say. That was a fantastic story. That was when I watched this, it really puts things into perspective for you, and and it makes you think about big turning points in your life, and makes you wonder where you would be had you made that different decision at that very critical juncture. Say 7 years ago, you and a friend parted ways when you could have said something. Maybe you and that friend could be married now, or something like that. Or maybe somebody who died in an accident. What if you and that person did something else and then that wouldn't have happened? There are a lot of those types of ideas floating around in our heads. And this just shows one of those types of little decisions that could have changed your entire life. And it puts into perspective for you what you want in life. Do you want riches and monetary, super awesome, mega live at the top, but your life is devoid of love? Or would you just prefer suburbia, but your life is full of love, even though you can't afford a $2,000 Armani suit anymore? It's like, oh, you get to have all of the toys, but you're not really enjoying them. You're just having them. You have to keep buying all of the toys because there is an endless void, a vacuum in your soul that you have to keep filling with things. You have to keep getting things, but none of it can satisfy that hunger in your body, that you need to have something else. And this glimpse shows Nicolas Cage that something that he wanted, that would have fulfilled him, that satiated his hunger, and made him realize he didn't really need all of these Armani suits. He didn't need the Ferrari. He didn't need any of that. What he really wanted was the high school sweetheart. And I thought that was really sweet. I thought this was a very interesting and fun and light-hearted film that I wanted to talk about, to get people more aware of, if that makes sense. The Family Man is a good Nicolas Cage movie.